parent can feel. The kind where your phone has no signal. Where the rain is so loud you can't hear yourself scream a name. Where every flashlight you point into the dark comes back empty. That was Silverwood on the night of October 14th. A 5-year-old boy named Leo had wandered away from his backyard at 4 p.m. By 7 p.m., the temperature had dropped 11 degrees, and the storm the weatherman had been warning about all week arrived. The entire town turned out. Neighbors, firefighters, strangers with dogs on leashes and worry on their faces. But here's the thing nobody knew yet. Leo wasn't alone out there. He had already been found, just not by any of them. Barnaby had been living on the edge of Silverwood for about 2 years by then. Most people in town had seen him at some point. A big, shaggy mixed breed, probably part shepherd, maybe part something nobody could quite name. He had a scar that ran from his left ear down to his jaw, and one of his back legs had healed wrong from some old injury nobody had bothered to treat. The kids at the bus stop used to throw sticks at him to make him flinch. The restaurant owner on Main Street kept a broom by the back door in case he came sniffing around the dumpster. Nobody had ever called him brave. Nobody had ever called him anything, really. He didn't have a name until Leo gave him one, that same night in the middle of the storm, in a way that would make an entire town feel ashamed of itself. At some point in the late afternoon, before the sky completely broke open, Barnaby had followed a scent into the East Woods, the dense stretch of old-growth forest that bordered the residential streets on one side and a creek on the other. Nobody knows exactly when he found Leo. The little boy couldn't give a perfect timeline later. But what Leo remembered, what he told his mother, and later told the local paper in the most heartbreaking quote you'll ever read, was this: "I was really, really cold and I was crying, and then I just felt something warm sit down next to me." Leo had wedged himself under the root system of a fallen oak. The roots arched overhead like broken ribs, giving maybe 18 inches of shelter from the rain. It wasn't enough. Barnaby crawled in beside him anyway. He didn't bark. He didn't run. He pressed his whole body along the length of the shivering child, that big, warm, scarred body, and he stayed. The hours that followed were long. For Leo's mother, Sarah, they were the longest hours of her life. She stood at the edge of the East Woods in a raincoat that soaked through in 20 minutes, calling her son's name until her voice cracked. For the search volunteers, the storm was making everything impossible. Radios cut in and out. The creek was rising. A firefighter twisted his ankle on a slick root and had to be helped back to the road. But under that fallen oak, something else was happening. Leo had stopped crying. Not because he felt completely safe. He was 5 years old and very lost, and he knew that, but because the dog next to him was calm. Completely, unnervingly calm. And when you're a frightened child, and the creature beside you has decided there is no reason to panic, you borrow a little of that quiet. Leo pressed his face into the dog's wet fur. He whispered, "I'm gonna call you Barnaby. Is that okay?" The dog did not object. Somewhere around midnight, though Leo wouldn't have known the hour, something moved in the dark beyond the fallen tree. Yellow eyes. Low to the ground, a coyote, probably drawn by the storm-flooded creek, was picking its way through the underbrush. And it had noticed them. Leo felt Barnaby shift beside him. The dog didn't lunge. He didn't make any dramatic show of it. He simply rose slowly and positioned himself between Leo and those yellow eyes. His body was low, his feet planted, and from deep in his chest came a sound so steady and deliberate it barely sounded like growling at all. It sounded like a promise. The coyote held its position for a long moment, the kind of moment that stretches out the way they do at 3 a.m. in the rain, and then turned and disappeared back into the dark. Barnaby waited, watching, and then only when he was satisfied, he turned around, walked back to Leo and lay back down. Leo, who would later describe this scene with 5-year-old precision, said, "He looked at it really hard until it went away. Dawn came the way it always does after a storm, slowly at first, then all at once. The rain thinned to drizzle. The darkness softened from black to gray to a pale, watery gold filtering through the oak leaves. Leo had fallen asleep at some point, with his fingers wound into Barnaby's fur. The dog had not moved. He was still awake. still watching the tree line, still there. The search party picked up the trail at 6:22 in the morning. A volunteer named Marcus, a high school gym teacher who had been out since midnight, spotted something through his flashlight beam. A shape under the fallen tree. Two shapes. He called out and then stopped. There was a large dog standing over the child, and it was not moving aside. The other volunteers gathered, uncertain. Someone reached for a branch. Someone else said, "Careful, that thing's feral." And then Leo woke up. He sat up, rubbed his eyes, looked at the people with their flashlights and their mud-covered boots, and he put both arms around the dog's neck. "This is Barnaby," he said. "He stayed with me all night. He kept me warm." Nobody reached for a branch after that. Sarah arrived 4 minutes later, summoned by a radio call. Nobody could get the words right on, something like, "We have him. He's okay. There's a dog just come." She ran the last 100 yards. She dropped to her knees in the mud, and she pulled her son into her arms, and she was crying and laughing at the same time, the way parents do, when the worst fear they've ever felt suddenly lifts all at once. And then she looked at the dog standing quietly beside them, this big scarred stray with the bad leg and the rain-matted fur, and she did something nobody in Silverwood had ever done before. She put her hand on his head, gently, and she said, "Thank you." Barnaby leaned into her hand, just slightly, like he'd been waiting for that a long time. 3 days later, Barnaby had a collar. 2 weeks after that, he had a vet record and a microchip and a name on file. He had a bed in Leo's room that he immediately outgrew and used anyway, half hanging off the edge, apparently unbothered. The restaurant owner on Main Street stopped keeping the broom by the back door. The kids at the bus stop started leaving out water in a bowl. A town that had looked at a stray for 2 years and seen a nuisance, looked at him again, and finally saw what had been there the whole time. Barnaby hadn't changed, they had. Here's what I want you to sit with after this video ends. Barnaby never asked to be loved. He didn't know how. He had been taught, by 2 years of flinching at thrown sticks and brooms and cold shoulders, that people were not safe. That the world was something to survive, not belong to. And yet, when a small boy needed warmth, Barnaby offered everything he had. No home. No training. No one who had ever told him he was good. Just a heart that hadn't given up. That's the thing about loyalty. About protectiveness. About the capacity to show up for someone in the dark. It doesn't come from having a perfect life. It doesn't come from being chosen first, or treated well, or given every advantage. Sometimes it comes from the ones the world forgot. The ones who stayed soft anyway. Every single day, there are dogs like Barnaby in shelters, on streets, in places where nobody is looking at them the way Leo looked at him, like they matter. Like they are worth something. Like they deserve to stay. If this story moved you, if you believe that a good heart deserves a good home, then hit subscribe. Because every week, we bring you stories like this one. Stories that remind you that love doesn't require a pedigree. That courage doesn't require a name. And that sometimes, the bravest soul in the room is the one everyone else walked past. Barnaby found his pack that night. Every dog deserves the same.